Hi everyone, welcome back to the Power of a Hobby. I'm your host, Don Fenton, and we have another guest. Hi Brad, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Great to have you on board with this podcast. I'm really excited to get into this one, not only from obviously what our little chat beforehand, but obviously what I've seen on social media. Brad, for people who don't know you, why don't you let them know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Brad Wendes, and I'm a local business owner. I've got a couple of businesses. I live in North Essex, up in Colchester, and I like to do things that I enjoy quite a lot, lots of them.
This is the whole point of this podcast is around trying to inspire people to take up different things. And having seen your journey and obviously going through a list of people we know, actually this could be a really long conversation, but we'll need to keep it. We'll need to keep it in terms of the time. So, Brad, the question that I ask every guest that comes on, first of all, what does the power of a hobby mean to you?
Well, for me, it couldn't be any bigger. The life that I've got and everything I do stems from starting a hobby when I was about 11 years old, which is quite late to be starting with like a sport. So I started gymnastics through Chelmer Valley High School, Blue Falcons gymnastic display team when I was in year seven. And that has been the fundamental incident in my life that's got me to where I am now. I now run a parkour academy. So we've got a 7,000 square foot building I'm in at the moment with like 1,000 registered customers and 12 staff. And this entire business, I've traveled the world, I've done amazing things. And it all comes from wanting to do gymnastics when I was 11. And the Blue Falcons wasn't like traditional gymnastics, it was like displays and events. So we would go out and we would do performances in arenas all summer. And that's what I've done for the last, this would be 20 years now. And we've got our first performance this weekend up in Lowestoft. So I'm still doing it. And I'm a bit older than 11 now.
Wow. And this is the thing, and there's so much to pick out of that. In terms of, so 11 years old, what made you want to start within gymnastics? Was it something you'd done at primary school? Was it something that you
No.
knew someone else was doing it? What was it that made you start doing it?
So I was never really good at traditional sports. I didn't really like football. I still don't really know anything about football. I dabbled in rugby. I think rugby's a better sport than football. It's another conversation, but
Yep.
but again, it wasn't for me. Didn't sort of catch. And I like most kids, you have a go at martial arts and you have a go at this and you have a go at that. And I actually saw this gymnastic display team on Blue Peter when I was in primary school, and they'd been on You Bet and they'd been on Blue Peter and they'd got like some accolades, and it turned out they were local, but they were on the other side of town. So we lived in Chelmer Village. So for anyone who's local, kind of knows what that is. And the school, Chelmer Valley High School, is the other side of town. I wasn't in the right catchment area. So I had to apply to go to this school, this high school. And it was a bit of an achievement to get into that school because we were out of area. So I've gone to this high school thinking it was like, a prestigious high school. And it's a good school, but for other people that were there just because it was in their catchment, it wasn't. So I went into school thinking like this was an achievement and a really good thing to go to this school. And there's lots of people there that hated it because it was school, because that's what they're at. So I probably went into high school with a different attitude to most people. And yeah, I wanted to join the gymnastic team. So I went and tried to find the coach who was in charge of it. And that was it. We did the tryouts and my parents got involved, and that was it. Gymnastics was my life. But it was, I say, not when I talk about gymnastics, it was like trampets and acrobatics and showmanship rather than competitive. And I think that probably engaged me better. So there are absolutely benefits to competitive sport. I'm not one of these people that's like, everyone gets a trophy, everyone for joining in. I think you need challenge and you need a little bit of healthy competition. But what I look at is, if you've got a game of football and you've got, 22 kids playing a game, half of them are going to go home disappointed. Whereas if you've got something that involves a lot of teamwork and working together, and you're still building resilience because there is still a challenge, but everyone can go away feeling like they've achieved something as a team because you're not against someone. It's you against a challenge rather than you against other people. I hope that makes sense, like what I'm saying there. But so that really like resonated with me. It was trying to increase my skill level, and it was me battling against myself to improve, to then do a show, and you get that immediate feedback of a crowd giving you a cheer and getting the biggest applause and those kind of things. And that worked to drive me.
So when you joined, obviously, what did your parents first think when you said, actually, this is what I want to do? Actually, the school that where it's connected to is the other side of town. Because again, I'm literally just around the corner from Chelmer Village.
Yeah.
So I know exactly where we're talking. Done some work with Chelmer Valley as well. So yeah, we know the schools. But from a parent point of view, what did they think when you went, actually, this is what I want to do?
I got to say, I've had this conversation, this exact conversation with a few people on various podcasts. So apologies for anyone who's listened to this before, but I'm now a parent. So I've got a little girl who's 22 months old. And you kind of realize what your parents would have done once you've got a kid of your own, because, you know, you're making the same choices or you're the same. I never realized until I was an adult quite how supportive my parents were compared to the rest of the world. So we grew up, didn't really have a lot of money. Parents worked hard, you know, 2 jobs. We didn't go on holiday. I've never been abroad with my mum and my stepdad. Like I haven't been on an airplane with my mum since 1989. We were not a wealthy family, but the support and the involvement they had in my life and our family life revolved around me and my needs and my wants, which was good and bad. You know, there's pros and cons to that. But when it came to like, there was this gymnastic team, it was driven by them. They were like, oh, we've looked it up. That gymnastic team are at a school in Chelmsford, and they pushed it. I was 11 years old, 10, 11 years old. I didn't, you know, know how to. We didn't have the internet. I couldn't just Google it. They went and did the legwork, and they'd arranged for a person from this school to come and give me an interview at my primary school, and I had to do that. And arrange for a school visit, which so the bus had to come out of the way from Boreham to come over to Chelmer Village to pick me up. Like they did a lot of that legwork because that was something that I was clearly very interested in. And they were big believers, as I am, that there is something for everyone. You know, you've just got to find your thing. And if you find something that you're passionate about and you enjoy, then that's going to make you feel like you belong, and it's going to bring all this positivity to your life, and you're going to have a much healthier outlook. And again, something that I've been talking a lot about recently is the other side of that is the person who doesn't feel that they belong, and the person that like identifies with other people who don't belong and feel like outcasts and misfits, and that can have really negative repercussions. And you know, you're looking at not so much in this country, but certainly the kind of people that go into schools with firearms in the States tend to be these kind of people that don't feel like they belong and feel like that's the way they're going to get noticed or that's the thing they need to do. And that's awful. It's awful that young men, and not just young men, but it's predominantly young men that get themselves in that situation, that because they don't feel that they belong, they don't feel like they've got a home and an external family, a third space, which was a phrase coined in one of our podcasts, was, you know, you've got home, you've got work or school, and then you need a third place to exist, somewhere you can go and be, and you feel at home and belonging there. And if you don't get that, then that becomes online, echo chamber, the world's out to get me, I'm going to go do something awful.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And I think you said the phrase, you know, there's something for everyone. That's what drives me. Because actually, you know, looking back, I was someone who played rugby from 5 years old, played chess from a primary school. And because we're a small primary school, I was on stage for everything. And you go to a secondary school, and all of a sudden, it's completely different. And also, I then didn't feel I fitted in. I tried to carry on doing the chess, but I did that for only about 6 months because I kept on beating everyone. So I was like, there's no point me doing this. Because even the teacher who ran the chess club was literally, we did about 3 moves every lunchtime. Just he tried to make it last longer. And I was just like, this isn't it. But it is, you need that place to belong.
Mm.
When, obviously, looking back now, from when you started, could you have ever imagined where it's taken you now, or the journey you've had on now? Why didn't you let sort of some of the listeners, the viewers, sort of just go through some of the places you visited, probably some of the people you've performed in front of?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know, sometimes I think we need to sit back and just listen and just allow this space for people just to come out and go, you know what, this is what I did, and it becomes incredible.
how long have you got? You know, I'll give you the highlights. So I started doing gymnastics 1994. So you can work my age out from that. And come 1996, we were performing at or I think not, yeah, 1996, we performed at the Royal Tournament. So I was very young, in front of an arena performance of 25,000 people, in front of members of the royal family. You know, the coach shook hands with Princess Michael of Kent. I've got on my desk over here medals from those events. I've got on my wall, which I can't get down, some soil from that event on a plaque that, this stuff really means something to me. It's very important to me. So I got a taste for like large scale performances from a very young age and being rehearsed and drilling it in. And so that was, in the 90s. And then kind of got involved in parkour and free running because I could do some acrobatics and tricks. And to be fair, I was a bit of a show off. I saw some lads jumping around at the park and I went and did some flips and they were like, wow, that's amazing. So I took them to the gym and they took me to London to meet the other free runners. So by 2007, we'd been contacted, myself and some friends have been contacted by Britain's Got Talent. It was the first year Britain's Got Talent ever existed. I'd spent, the previous decade doing arena performances. So I was very used to being in front of a crowd and doing shows. So Britain's Got Talent got in touch with us. They said they'd had too many singing and dancing acts and they were looking for more variety, and they'd found us online because we had some videos. It was the infancy of like YouTube and the very beginnings of social media, more like internet forums then. So we got invited along to do it. We got through to the semi-finals. So last 25 on Britain's Got Talent, the first year it ran, I did a flip over ant and deck, which was completely unrehearsed. Like actually just dragged them out on stage and said, let's do this, which ended up in the center pages of Heat magazine. So it was a bit of a mad ride. So we got like, I think the viewership was something like 9 million people watched our semi-finals. It was crazy. Like, so you go from we're jumping around down the street. Excuse me. We're jumping around out on the street. And the next thing you know, we're staying in 5-star hotels and being driven around by limos. And I remember we were training just out on the South Bank with some friends once. And it was during that Britain's Got Talent time. And we were like put up in a hotel and anything we wanted was you phone someone up and it's sorted out for you. It was a really weird time and a taste of a kind of life that I've never experienced before. And we were joking, or in fact, we weren't even joking. We said, "Oh, let us know when you guys want to go home because we need to like call our chauffeur-driven limo." And one of the guys is like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to call my helicopter." So we got to the end of the training session and we've like phoned this guy who's waiting around the corner, and this chauffeur-driven limo turns up, and we go in, and good luck with your helicopter, guys. So and that was, we then off the back of that, I think we probably could have done more if we did that level of Britain's Got Talent now. Think there's more of an infrastructure and more of a direct path to follow. And there are agencies who, get people off Britain's Got Talent. I've got my Britain's Got Talent contract. It's like War and Peace. It's like an inch thick. And we never got that contract because we didn't get through to the finals, which was the last 5 acts or whatever. But we did get some interest from corporate acts and it boosted us. Stupidly, we called ourselves the Free Runners rather than, a Google friendly name. So it was a bit harder to latch onto the back of it, but we had no idea what we were doing, none at all. So I've ended up traveling around the world, a lot of like trade shows and a lot of performances around Europe. But we did the premiere of Sex and the City, the world premiere of the first Sex and the City movie. We went and performed at that, just doing some flips and tricks. We performed for like News International. We performed for Barclays Bank, doing the corporate like Christmas parties and things, like huge events and access to the kind of people and the kind of life that we'd never had any idea about. And we were sitting in a jacuzzi in this amazing golf resort in Portugal once, like with waitress service, hot chocolate and a beer, and then like chocolate brownies. We're just sitting in this hot tub, private hot tub. Amazing. That kind of life that a working class lad from Chelmsford never experienced. So I've traveled more solo and with work than I ever did, holidays and things. So 2008, 2009, there was that financial crash, and it was unfortunate that we were at the peak of our corporate career at the point where even the companies that had money couldn't be seen to be spending it. So we got like a couple of years of the high life, the high life, all expenses paid wherever we go. It was brilliant. And then that kind of came to an end. And we got involved in coaching. And that's really the beginning of that. But in terms of like other things we've done since then, the world's recovered a little bit. But I've worked with Glenn Close. I've worked with Emma Thompson. I've been working with the English National Opera doing choreography and work on these massive high-end productions since about 2009, 2010. I've worked on Porgy and Bess, which was an Olivier Award-winning show. I've taken a standing ovation to like over 1,000 people at the Dutch National Opera in Amsterdam, again, working on shows. I've had a really interesting career and I've done some amazing things. And because of my background, I think when it came to like the financial crash and like, what the hell do we do now? We were contacted by a group in St. Albans, a youth group in St. Albans, said, could you teach what you do? We've seen you, Britain's Got Talent and shows and things. Could you teach what you do? I'm like, probably, I reckon so. So that was the beginnings of that. And we ended up, myself and some friends set up the British Parkour Coaching Association. We were the first people in the UK to come up with formal coaching standards and a coaching like pathway for parkour. which had some acrobatic elements to it. And we were working with kids who were involved in the police, involved in antisocial behavior, and doing sport diversion from around that time. I was working with inner city schools. We were going into like pupil referral units, but also residential schools. So kind of one step before youth offender. And it was a real interesting time because I'd gone from like being working class and, living a very normal life, and through the medium of gymnastics and acrobatics ended up having a little taste of this incredible life. And now I've come back down to earth and giving back to the community. And now we've kind of got a balance between the two. We do some amazing things, and I get to travel with work and do some really cool stuff. But really, the bread and butter is trying to inspire a future generation and show that actually, it doesn't matter what your background is. If you find something you're passionate about, it can take you to amazing places.
Yeah, I think that's incredible, and as you say, that's just a snippet,
Mm.
really, of what's gone on. If you could you just say, you now look back at the 11-year-old you and go, look, this is what we've done. I just think I'm a big believer in you find what you're passionate about, you find what's right for you, because actually it becomes part of you and it
Mm.
becomes part of your identity. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in the modern world, there's probably more of that. Like people really cling to identity more now than when I was a kid. Like if someone said like, who are you when you're 12? You're like, well, I'm Brad. I go to school. I like doing a bit of gymnastics. Whereas now it's like, who are you? What are you? And it's the way people dress and the kind of people they mix with. I'm a gamer, or I'm a free runner, or I'm a footballer. Like that is your identity. And I think I probably missed that, and that I'm a bit older, so I didn't have to latch on to my activity to define me, but it certainly defined my life. Like I did the activity. I didn't need to show the world this is what I do. Yeah, I walk around in grey sweatpants every day, but they're really comfortable.
Yeah, that's we go for comfort. This
Yeah.
this is the thing. We go for comfort. How when you were starting out, how were the other kids at school? Were you because again, you went into school very differently to a lot of them because
Hmm.
actually it's linked to the Blue Falcons, it's linked to this. This is what
Yeah.
I'm doing. How did you only hang around at school with the Blue Falcons as such? Were
Um,
you all how were the other kids when you were going out and doing all these performances and things like that?
it was quite prestigious to be part of that team at Chummer Valley. It was a good thing. It was seen as like it gave you some social credibility. So I was quite a geeky kid. I look back on school. I don't think I enjoyed school very much. I got a little bit of hassle, and I probably wouldn't say bullying. I probably would have said bullying at the time, but I don't think it was severe enough to warrant. Like there were some kids that gave me a hard time and might have had a little scuffle in the playground, but it wasn't relentless kind of the kind of bullying that you see.
Mm.
So I didn't have a great time at school, but the gymnastics that was linked to the school was my thing. But because I came from a different school, I didn't know anyone when I started. So you've got all these pockets of people from various primary schools, and I was the only one from mine. So I didn't know anyone. And I think that didn't set me off too well because walk into your high school on the first day and you've got your bag on both shoulders and your buttons done up, which for anyone who's a bit younger was an absolute no. You didn't wear your bag on two shoulders and have your buttons done up on your blazer. So straight away, my first experience of high school was walking onto the playground and being shouted at from every direction to take my bag off. I'm like, what's going on? So you've got to learn these social cues and you got to learn what's going on and have the right shoes and all these kind of things. So I was a bit geeky and I didn't really have a circle of friends. It took me a while to get into it. So the gymnastic team did give me that sense of identity. And the time I always remember is being in year seven and going in and getting my tray of food from at lunchtime and walking out into the hall and kind of looking around like a little lost lamb. Where am I going to sit? And some older boys from the gymnastic team called me over and said, come sit with us. So when I'm in year seven, first year of high school, and I'm being called over by people who are in like year 9 and 10, who are much older, much cooler than me, that gives you a lot of social credibility. So I, even without me trying, they accepted me because I was in the gymnastics team, because I was one of them. And we did look out for each other. There were some kids that were like maybe not from great families and probably a little bit, tougher and more streetwise and did things they probably shouldn't, who were part of the gymnastic team. And I knew that I would never get in any trouble from that lot. I could walk around various estates and know that I was perfectly safe because I was in that crowd. That was my in group. So I think I was quite fortunate there that the gymnastic team did give me that sense of, not that it stopped me getting stabbed, because it wasn't that wasn't really the world we
Yeah.
lived in back then, but I knew that I could safely walk around certain estates in Chelmsford as a teenager and would never get any trouble, because I knew the right people and they had a certain amount of respect for me for being in that team.
Yeah, and I think that's really, it really is that belonging. And,
Hmm.
when I started secondary school, my older brother was there, but he was in his last year. So again, you get a little bit of that,
Yep.
but all of a sudden things change when he leaves.
Yeah.
And then they're going, oh no, here we go. We're gonna have to deal with it now. But it is, and I think it is that bit of being part of a family, being part of a connection, being part of a group, because you do look out for each other. I'm sure, I'm sure the work I know from coaching rugby for probably 25 years, that I hope I created a family unit. I hope I created, especially if any of if our young players didn't have a dad on the scene,
Yep.
or had a struggle relationship with their parents and things like that. Actually, we want them to belong. We want them to feel part of it. And that was a big thing for me, because I'd grown up at the rugby club.
Yep.
And I'm sure it's probably what you do now in terms of the work you do with young people now, and also your club.
Yeah. And that's something that we find to be like a really important driving force. So I run a parkour academy up in Whittam. If anyone's interested, teamkinetics.co.uk. We run classes every day. We run toddlers classes, adult classes, ladies only classes, send sessions, all kinds of things. I won't plug it too hard, but if you're interested in parkour acrobatics, then hit us up, because we've got a bunch of kids that come here. And now I can think of a few names off the top of my head of people who come here every day. And this is their third space. This is their safe space. This is where they like to be. And as we've branched out and we've been working with some families and kids who maybe don't have such a great time at home, this is a really safe space for them, because I was fortunate enough that, I had a level of protection at school and I had a really loving home life. And my third space was, kind of back to school to do gymnastics, where some people going home isn't a safe space and they need somewhere
Mm.
else to be. And we can give them that. And we really pride ourselves on having people feel that they belong here. Whatever their level of physical competency, we build a community of camaraderie that we want them to push each other. And the older ones are encouraging the younger ones in a way that I experienced in gymnastics. Because it was non-competitive, it's you against the activity. It's not you against the other kids. And that gets a lovely community feeling here that we don't see in lots of other clubs, some, but not all. And I think that's something we're very proud of.
Yeah, and I think that just goes to show, actually, we know that, having doing the work that we both do, we know there are some clubs that aren't safe places.
Mm.
And actually, if that's part of our drive, we will do as much as we can to make that happen. And I think that's really important. Right, last question before we finish. I know. So, if someone came to you and said they haven't got a hobby, but they'd really like a hobby, what would you say to them?
Well, I'm a business owner, so I want them to come do my hobby, don't I? But realistically, there's in the modern world, there's a wealth of activities available to people, and there's a lot less barriers than perhaps there have been. There's a lot of funding available for clubs to have people come along and have a go for free. We've got a group of people coming in this afternoon where there's no cost to them. They're coming down, they're having a nice, hot, nutritious lunch, and they've got activities all afternoon. So I'd say if you want to try something, if you can, if finances aren't an issue, come down, try it out. Most clubs will do, a half price or a free first session. Try a lot of things, see what you enjoy, see where you feel welcome and belong. And if finances are a problem, then get in touch with either us or any club you want to try out, because they probably have funding available. I know people do like buy one in reserve. So someone will pay for 2 slots. And then
Mm.
if someone else approaches and says, I can't afford to come, it's all right, well, we've got one in the bank, like you
Yeah.
do in a coffee shop. So don't be afraid to approach clubs and just ask questions. What's going on? Can I come down and watch a session? Have you got anything online I can read? Um, People phone us up and we have lovely chats about the club and what we do. And people tend to then go, oh, great, we'll come down, try it out. Because if you look at parkour on YouTube, you're going to see a lot of crazy, dangerous things. And that's not where we're at all. Ground level, obstacle overcoming, playing floor as lava, skills acquisition, building resilience, and working on very low levels of fear and teamwork. That's where we're at. We're not, I mean, no one's getting on the roof here. It's not, it wouldn't take your weight.
Brilliant. So, Brad, where can people, if they want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, I'm very fortunate that I'm the only Brad Wendes in the world. As far as I'm aware, like, there's not many people with my surname, Wendes, Brad Wendes. So if you type Brad Wendes into Google, you'll find me. I mean, on social media, YouTube, but in terms of parkour and things, Team Kinetics Parkour, any of these things will take you to us. Teamkinetics.co.uk takes to the website. There's a little bit of information on there about some of the shows and events we've done, but there's also a classes page where you can book. And for people further afield, we can go out and do workshops or events. And that's kind of the two outlets for people that come through our academy. Is they might go on to be a performer, they might go on to be a coach, or they might just want to keep training forever. That's it. So Brad Wendes or Team Kinetics, drop me a message on any one of the various social medias or emails or anything. And yeah, let's connect.
Amazing. Brad, thank you very much for your time. As you say, I'm sure we could have gone on for a whole lot longer. And we probably will in other formats, so that'll be fine.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Dom.
No problem. It's been amazing. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I'm your host, Dom Fenton. This is the Power of a Hobby, and we'll see you next time. Take care now. Bye-bye.